Welcome to Talkin Shop, the podcast where we break down the big questions in physical security, challenge the status quo, and talk shop on everything from tech to tactics. Joining us on the mic today is Baer Halvorson. He's a PSP and host of the Security Today podcast, a hands-on integrator, and an engineer who knows the ins and outs of making security solutions work in the real world. We also have Benji Bolick, aka the Dork, partner fanatic at ProDataKey, an access control enthusiast, and a passionate evangelist for all things physical security. And lastly, Jon Harris, host of the Next Level podcast, founder of Apex Performance, a seasoned security executive, a security technology nerd, and a high-performance coach. Each episode, they take you through three big security questions, debate, discuss, and talk shop. So buckle up, let's get into it. This is Talkin Shop.
All right. Well, welcome to another episode of Talkin Shop. I'm Benji Bolick, and we're joined here with Jon Harris and Uncle Baer. I was going to use your real name, but Uncle Baer sounds better. So
yeah, let's do it.
and this is us breaking down the biggest topics in physical security. Each episode, we're going to take three different questions, one from each one of us, brought to the table, and we're going to debate, we're going to discuss, and maybe even argue a little bit. Things could get heated, but it's okay because we're security guys. We're talking shop, right? So let's buckle up and get ready for another episode of Talkin Shop.
Right on.
All right. Ballin'. Well, Jon, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, I'd love to. So, very controversial topic, and I'm excited to bring this. This isn't a new topic per se, but why I'm bringing it to the attention of our listeners and to the table of our discussion here as we're talking shop is this became a very heated dialogue in the Slack community for the access control executive brief. Leo Dessa's community, we're all part of it. Every now and again, it'll totally derail our entire mornings as we dive into topics. And it happens about once a month, and we just, the whole, literally the security industry might grind to a halt as 50 people just start diving into it. This was one of those topics, right? So some, we'll keep names out to not get people in trouble with the fact that maybe they work for a big company and didn't do any work for 4 hours as they were debating this topic. So names will remain nameless to protect the innocent. But a lot of people got involved. Somebody kind of tossed this in. An end user asked the question about or brought up the topic around mobile credentials and badge, mobile credentials and readers for mobile credentials, the whole topic. And so we got into this debate around whether or not physical badges could ever be completely replaced by mobile credentials. Now, I do want to spotlight, and I brought this up as part of the debate. Go back and listen to our first episode, I think from September of last year, where we brought up the concept of what happens if we just all stopped doing procs. Because that was an interesting thing that weaved into this around one thing may precipitate the other. But this was just the topic on its face. Can mobile ever completely replace the physical badge? And we'll start there. And Benji, I want to start with you because you work for a company who's bringing solutions to the marketplace. This is probably part of discussions you're having with end users and channel partners and what have you. So. What are your thoughts? I mean, you're also a lock guy, so there's a whole other conversation we talked about actually about the elimination of the physical lock, which so that's another predicated conversation. But what about badges mobile? Can we get rid of badges altogether? Will there ever be a day where mobile takes over?
Oh man, I mean, as security professionals, I think they're. We use badges for other than just your credentials, right? And so I think if you're in those environments where you do require some kind of photo ID, it's going to be a long time before someone adopts a technology like mobile credentials to replace a physical badge. I think, honestly, and this is probably not even what I should say because, at PDK we do mobile credentials, but I honestly think that the physical credential will probably be replaced with something other than mobile. it might turn into where you're more of a biometric credential, or more of a, I think in the Access executive brief we talked about ultra wideband. We just touched a little bit about ultra wideband and how it's, it seems so far out, but it's really not. Like, each one of our phones already have ultra wideband built into it. So the technology is there, and potentially it could get to the point where, you're just walking into a building and it recognizes you, that you have intent walking into that building. You're geo-fenced in with that ultra wideband, and it understands that you are walking through that building. And so honestly, I think maybe that, and this might be controversial, but I think maybe instead of mobile credentials, physical credentials might get replaced by something else.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting, and we talked a little bit about that. My whole rub is that you're basically saying, instead of wearing something around your neck, just pull it out of your pocket. And so the inferred convenience is not actually convenient. Like, if you look at the old talk, it's like, hey, don't you forget your badge all the time? You don't turn around for that. You're not going to drive all the way home from your commute to go get that stupid badge. But if you forgot your phone, man, you'd go get it. So upgrade to mobile, and it'll cost you $1 million more. But that's cool because it's mobile. And it was like, that was kind of the talk track. Did I just nail it, Baer? Like, it was like, all right.
Spot on.
But I mean, so like that was like version 1, and then like
we'll
now
see
there's
the Florida ISC.
yeah. And so now the funny thing is, like, when we go to the Florida ISC in a couple of weeks, there'll still be people using that talk track, and they're underselling, I think, the capabilities of it, of like what it can actually do. But for the uninitiated, ultra wideband, can you like expound upon that a little bit more to like what is that, and like how would it be used for access control?
Yeah, so in theory, it's just a communication protocol of sorts. I'm actually not an expert on ultra wideband. I've just started like diving in, and so I definitely want to dig in deeper. I've talked with a couple companies out there that are using this technology in very creative ways. They'd probably be the people that I would refer to as an expert on it. But ultra wideband, it's you see it on your phone pop up when you're outside of your local network. It's like an extension of your network, and it's the ability for you to, do what you would normally do on your phone, but within that extended network. So
right.
Same thing could potentially, it kind of sets you up in a way where you could use that as your credential without having to pull your phone out, without
right.
having to show your badge. It's essentially the functionality of a long-range Bluetooth reader, but with the security of an NFC credential. So it's I don't know. We'll see
yeah.
what happens. And I could definitely see it replacing the physical credential before mobile does.
Right. Well, I mean, so, and we're going to split hairs here, because I'm discussing mobile credentials in the way it exists today, which is a digital badge that's in your wallet, just like your credit card is, or the other, your Delta, your Marriott. It's a digitalization of the credential. What Benji just expressed is what I would refer to as like passive access control access or enablement, where I don't have to and it exists kind of today, like you said, with Linnell S2's Blue Diamond readers had like and even HID stuff has this like a 15-foot or so offset that you could, if you had it enabled and other features on your phone enabled, it could pick you up while you're walking to a door. Now the problem, and if you've ever been at like when they first enabled this in hotels, is that the same technology is in like Marriott's or those at the back end is in those same apps. And so you'd walk by doors and they'd start popping up like, do you want to go in room 300, and you're up on floor 4 because your range. And so they had to lock that down and make it closer. And so they've kind of taken away some of those features, but they're there in the quote unquote mobile credential as it exists today. But I think you're hinting at this evolution where the digitalization, like the at the door experience, is going to change. whether it's biometric, meaning like something's going to read my face and then it's going to know. And even the intent piece, there's a company called Active Witness that has this, like, they've built, and there's this other technology. The company doesn't exist anymore, but I met them at ISC a couple years ago where they were able to use, they kind of quantified intent based on body movement and gait and stuff like that. So like they had some sort of IR reader that would correlate with the badge reader, and so as you approach the door, if your gait slowed and you turned, then it would look for the credential, and then it would have the credential, then the door would open, and you'd never have to do, and it was either biometric facial or looking for that digital badge in your wallet, and it could read both. So it's like, but no one's put it together, and I think maybe more importantly, like we just alluded to, the story isn't there to tell yet, right? So like, you know, shocking that the industry's shitty at marketing and things like that, where we go back to this, like, you know, just imagine a badge on your phone. Like that's kind of where we're talking about today versus reimagining the door opening experience. All right, so to summarize, Benji, your thoughts are no. And if it does get replaced, it'll be replaced by something else.
Yes.
Some sort of different technology may still reside on the phone, you know, or not. Right? We don't know.
Yeah.
All right, Uncle Baer, what say you?
Yes, I was very much enjoying that thread, and I think at one point I said, here's my, I like this thought, but I've not thought about it, so don't ask me to expand on it.
That's the kind of hard-hitting, intelligent conversation that we get.
Yes.
In addition to talking about underwear stealing gnomes and the capability of someone singing karaoke of Total Eclipse of the Heart by Bonnie Tyler.
Yeah, it got a little wild, but I think that, I don't know, I feel maybe that innately in me, my knee-jerk response to pretty much everything in my life is pushback, and that's probably some childhood trauma that I need to unpack, but when I saw it, I was like, well, so I started asking myself some questions, and I feel that the mobile credential has been, like you said, it's a heavy talk track, man. It's a heavy hitter when it comes to how these companies are saying we're pushing the industry forward, and then they kind of lead with this mobile credential theology, if you will. And so I feel that a lot of times when I hear people talk about mobile credentials, it sounds like they are more interested in like technology and advancement and like in the pursuit of maybe that different experience at the door or a more secure door that's tied to maybe something biological or that sort of thing. But it feels like maybe we're pushing hard in the right direction, but with like the wrong tool. And so maybe that lends itself to a little bit of Benji's explanation of we might actually just skip that before the next thing is like really settled in to this is how we experience access control. But yeah, I think I'm a big proponent of the physical badge for a couple of reasons, just because of that redundancy. I know that like Lindsay Martinez would be cheering this conversation right now.
Shout out to Lindsay.
Yeah.
She'll be a big fan of this.
But I do like the redundancy there. I also like if you ever look into things like Badge Pass or whatever it be, you can add security features or measures to the physical card, from microtext to NFC to hologram, that sort of thing. And that just plays in the defense in depth theory, where it's like you usually would be defense in depth. You would be looking at a site and say, we're going to, make these checkpoints that someone would have to get through to get to an asset. But it's like if you start like layering that into one thing, like a physical badge, where you have multiple security features on one thing, and then that badge is redundant with it wearing and being a visual indicator that you are in the right zone, because in access control we secure zones, not doors. So it's like pushing that forward and letting that kind of be in our industry, I think would be beneficial to doing what we're trying to do, which is secure the world. Yes, with the experience behind it and the user friendliness and using technology to kind of catch our industry up to everything around us. But I'm a big proponent of the physical side of things. I like it a little bit more.
You might. And I was gonna say, but like physical badges, can't you just print those off? Couldn't someone scan that pretty easily?
Yes, to a degree. I think that if that physical badge is also tied to your access control credential, and it's also tied to features like microtext or hologram, especially in high security situations, if you're using what's it called when you like empower the employees to be kind of your defense in like, why are you here? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So like it can mold into that too. Yes, like you could definitely just print it, but if you're using it correctly within your security system and your client understands how to use their security layers and kind of their contingency plans and stuff like that, then they should be able to combat that pretty easily, I would suspect.
And I brought up, my formative years in security. I worked at aerospace and defense company, high security classified programs, ITAR programs, and I wrote, and my mom still works at the company that I was at. So she works at one of the subsidiary companies, and they still use the control plan globally that I authored in like 2012. I don't know if that's bad because it's been over a decade. They're still using the same shit, or else I'm fucking awesome because the stuff that I wrote has staying power. I'm gonna go with the latter.
Maybe it's both.
Could be both. Both can be true. It's not mutually exclusive. But the whole crux of it was, we had to create a plan that allowed us to control at point of control, meaning like where the shit is that needs to be controlled, we're going to control to the highest level there. And then, like you said, Baer, layers of control that lessen out from there. So it all depends on what kind of what you have. We had a lot of highly controlled physical assets, right? If we were a software company that all of our IP existed in a digital world, the physical access outside of the physical threats of workplace violence or other things like that goes down exponentially, meaning that the kind of like know your visitor concept of like everybody being visually identified lessens a lot. And it also depends on how big your company is. Like companies like Amazon, who have 40,000 people walking through a place, like you're never going to know all the people there. So you have to have a different threat profile, which requires different countermeasures, which is why consultants get paid thousands and thousands of millions of dollars to figure this shit out for people, because it has the biggest wrinkle and the greatest response ever created in the world of consulting. It depends. And so my response was, I don't see a world where mobile can completely replace, because look at what like Raytheon is now the version of what my company was when I was there at United Technologies. There's no way, and I can unequivocally state, like within my, what did we say? Like I said within my like lifetime being like working years, that I could see them completely eliminating the physical badge, because the government's not going to eliminate the physical badge. And the government flows down requirements onto their subcontractors that they have to maintain, and so those things are going to take a lot, and they take 10 years to flow through, right? So it takes forever for that stuff to get done. But if I work for a tech company, like when I used to work at Hivewatch, we didn't wear badges. We had badges, we didn't wear them, right? There's 40 of us. There's 20 of us in the office. We used OpenPath. We used it on our phones. I never carried my badge. Because we didn't need to, because the threat environment, what we did, what we were worried about, there was a base building that had controls down there. Like that was a very, we'll call it mobile friendly operating environment. And I feel that while more operations are on the mobile friendly operating environment spectrum, more people work for, I won't say that. I think more people work for those big companies, and especially now with all this return to office stuff, like, and kind of the socio environment we're working in today, that's very kind of like high risk, whether that's actual risk, there's the perception of high risk right now. More places are operating like Raytheon than they're operating like Hivewatch, even though there's probably more Hivewatches than there are Raytheons. But I would also argue more people work for those big companies than work for the other ones. So all to say, no, I don't see it happening. It doesn't mean that that like our buddy Phil and Andrew over at HID should just quit their day jobs because they're the mobile evangelists. No, keep hammering that because there's a market for it and there's a place for it. I am very adamant that it's never going to be a one-for-one replacement, and I tend to agree with you, Benji, that we're gonna jump over mobile into something else. We'll never see like physical go away, mobile, and then the next thing. We're gonna see like some like mobile adoption that kind of gets people thinking like, but when you realize like I'm just trading, half a dozen for 6, it's like, well, I want to get to 2. Like I'm just doing, instead of this, I'm doing this, right? So instead of pulling my badge out, I'm pulling this out. So okay, that's cool, but it doesn't solve the problem. Well, the problem is, I don't know, like what problem are you solving? I guess that's a whole different discussion, and where I'd want to like really get into the pit with some of the mobile evangelists is saying, what problem are you solving? Because even I'll die on this hill. Even the whole OSDP evangelists, I don't think it's that big a deal. Same reason I just talked about. It's the same thing. You're solving for a problem that that people don't give a shit about, because if you lock down the stuff that really, really matters, I know it looks great on the fucking, Red Hat, DevCon fucking tables where they can look what I can do to a prox, and the flipper and the thing that just happened. Like, yes, there are risks there, but you mitigate those risks. And if it's a high enough, if it's a high, like the one that just came out about the university, like you got to fix that, but also tell me when's the last time they audited their physical key. I still have one of my keys from college. I graduated in 2007. So like, if you're not auditing your physical keys, who the fuck cares about proxies, right? So
that's true.
You know what I mean? So like you gotta really understand what problem you're solving. How big is that problem, and is this the only solution for it? And so I know I'm gonna get tons of hate on the OSDP part of it, but I'm just like, I don't think it's that big of a deal.
You sacrilegious piece of shit.
You might get some hate from people on this podcast. I'm a huge advocate for OSDP.
I don't disagree that more security, like having a secure communication channel is better. What I'm stating is that I'm hard pressed to find sorry, choked on my coffee. I'm hard pressed to find.
He really feels passionate.
I really
about
feel
this.
about this. You really get me fired up, Benji. That like, if the sky was falling, if it was as big of a risk as some say it is, we'd be doing more about it. We wouldn't. Our companies would stop. So if Microsoft is selling a software package that has a huge vulnerability in it, they fix it or they stop selling it. Right? That's why XP is the end of life. If Prox is as unsecure as we say it is, why are we still making millions of dollars off of it? Either we're the worst fucking people in the world and we're greedy as fuck and we don't care about our clients, we don't care about our customers because we don't give a shit about their security even though we're the security industry, or it's not that big of a fucking deal. Maybe it's not that black and white, and we're going off topic here a little bit. We're talking about badges and mobile credentials, but this is the kind of, hey, guess what, guys? This is what happens when we're talking shop. We told you we may argue a little bit. We didn't know it'd be this soon.
I just wonder if you can't really compare apples to apples when it comes to software to hardware because of like time to, let's say, like time to access or time to secure the threat. So like if there's a software package that has to come out today because we have millions of users on this thing, and in a couple of seconds running some code you can get into it and start stealing information, and then it might also be in the logical cybersecurity world, it's like they overreact a little bit because the one time that they don't, it's like an actual fucking issue. But when it comes to the physical side of things, like it kind of feels old hat, or it kind of feels kind of like old brow to be like, well, nah, I mean, Prox works. Like, it just works. And by the time that it whittles itself down from the manufacturer, who is making money off it still, because there's still like Joe Blow in the field being like, well, the customer wants it cheaper. Well, guess what? The customer always wants it cheaper. So, like, you got to have a bar at some point to be like, yes, I know you want it cheaper than that. And you can pay the guy down the street, you know, the Dan in a van to come out and do that. But the integrator isn't educated enough to be like, but here's why you don't want to do that. Because here's Benji's video. You know what I'm saying? Watch this.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to be hyper intelligent to be like, let me tell you about why OSDP protocol, only version 2, is going to work for you. You know, like, you can just be like, look, I'm educated enough to know that this could cause a problem.
Yeah,
and I just don't feel like there's enough
like,
fight.
hey, like, this would allow people to hack into your shit, and for, you know, what amounts to over the life of your install, maybe, you know, $5 a month.
Yeah,
I can give you something that's way more secure, and that will be able to XYZ, right? And again, I think that's the story versus the story we tell is that, like, oh, you got Prox, you're gonna die.
Yeah. No,
Right?
I agree.
You know,
It's not
that's
necessarily
like,
that.
extremes versus like,
I do
hey,
think that
you wouldn't put in just like a, you know, you're putting in something that's, I mean, and you alluded to it, like we say it on both sides of our mouths of like, hey, you're putting in something insecure. I'm still going to sell it because you know, but I will give credit where credit's due. Like, a lot of these manufacturers are kind of communicating like, hey, this is a less than secure product. So kind of like, we want to let you know this isn't the most secure product in the world, but you know,
which I think that they say, and then they hesitate because it still makes us money. And I also think that the industry sometimes is like, guys, the manufacturers, you got to stop selling it. Like, stop selling this shit. But at the same time, I kind of have to thump on my own people and be like, hey, integrator, wake up and don't buy it. Like, don't put it in your bid.
Yeah,
Because
and end users demand that like put it in your RFP that you want that, and then manufacturers, let's create a less expensive version of secure communication, right? Like, everybody can do their job here. This can be it's like the old question, like, well, who owns cybersecurity? Everybody, right? Have a secure product, install it in a secure way, and have good, robust cyber hygiene as the end user, so that everyone's got a piece in it. It's the same in this. Like, make it less expensive to manufacture and purchase it. Maybe OSDP is not the right. Like we just talked about mobile, right? Maybe OSDP is the starting point to secure communication. We're going to jump over that and get into something else that is less expensive and more secure. Who knows?
Yeah.
All right.
Well, there's half the podcast on one question.
All right. Well, let's shift gears here. Benji, let's go to your question. Because we're going to get us completely off of this topic, so we don't like degrade into this discussion again.
Yeah, I feel like we could have done like a whole nother question about, you know.
I think we did. I think we actually ended up doing 2 questions. I monopolized the time as usual, so apologies for that. Benji, with the improvement of cameras, sensors, machine learning, and integrated access control, where do you see... you're supposed to read your own question, and I'm reading it for you, but I hope that's okay. Where do you see the future of burglar alarms going? Non-response policy for police, etc. I love this one.
Okay, have you guys heard about the non-response policy by...
why don't you explain it, though, for the listeners who may not know?
So the list keeps on growing and growing, but it's almost every metro city in America now is setting up where if you have a burglar alarm system and it goes off, and, you know, it usually sends a signal to, you know, the police to have someone respond to it, they will not respond unless it's verified. There's been so many false alarms out there, and rightfully so, right? That happens all the time. But, you know, the old fable of the kid who cried wolf, right? And it takes so much resources and effort. So I don't blame the the police department for not being able to respond, because that's just wasting their time if it's not verified. So they require a verified alarm for someone to actually respond to an alarm. And if that's the case, like, why do you have, I mean, I get the burglar alarm might deter some theft, but if they know that they're not going to get responded to, then like, what's going to stop them from breaking and entering? So like, think about, like, I'm in the Pacific Northwest, Seattle, Portland, Chicago, Milwaukee, all these other, there's New York, LA, all of these cities out there where they have a non-response policy to burglar alarms. So like, if you look at today's technology, and this is where my question comes in, where do we see the future of burglar alarms if your cameras are required for you to even get a response from your burglar alarm, or your access control is integrated so well that it could almost replace your burglar alarm, right? You could get notifications and updates and door position switch and sensors all integrated with your VMS system and with your access control. So I'm asking, where do you guys see the future of burglar alarms?
I think that's a great question, and I think it's actually something that the industry is sleeping on a little bit. I know for the integrator that I work with, a lot of the enterprise systems that we do, we use Gallagher, and Gallagher has a I think it's like PTSN or PSTN module that hooks to their access controller that then acts as a Berg monitoring. It can like call out to a monitoring station, and then all of your door contacts that are just wired into your access control are acting as like door position switch, like for your Berg system, and that ties in right away. So this is actually something that isn't new to the Berg industry. If you're in security and you don't know Berg very well, it was huge in the 90s that they were wasting time on false alarms. In fact, I looked it up while you were talking because I remember this 1998 study from the International Association of Chiefs of Police and the Security Industry Alarm.
Oh,
We lost your audio for a
I
second.
just lost your audio. I think you got accidentally muted. Sorry.
I can't stick the
You're
landing.
back.
All right, here we go. This study was showing that 94 to 98% of alarms were false. And so that was pulling
Wow.
10 in 1998, 10 to 20% of police time across the country was spent on false alarms, which racks up to hundreds of thousands of tax dollars going to just show up and see that the alarm was false because of probably a glass break sensor, but that's for another time. But no, so it is a huge issue, and I think that the future of Berg has a lot of potential integrating into the access control system and working off of push notifications that go directly to ownership. So putting it more on the person who can then check their camera system or is in the building and can go look before it ever gets out and touches the authorities. Now, you did say that you have to have it verified. And for our listeners, what that means is that there are ways to verify that it's an actual alarm. A lot of that is being dealt with checked video response. So you can wire your cameras into this little device, that sits on the network, and it passes through, and it now shows the monitoring station your cameras, so they can verify that there's an actual intruder on site or that there's someone poking around, and they can send the call from the monitoring station to the authorities. So, yeah, there's a lot of potential there. That's a great turn of the head to be like, oh, what's happening over there for our industry if we could.
Yeah, and I think just to expand upon that, Baer, as long as I've been in the industry, many municipalities have had a fining mechanism for false alarms. So you would get California, one of my first remote sites that I monitored. We were mandatory to have UL 2050 is a alarm offsite alarm qualification through UL, and most central alarm stations are mandated to have that. and it has to do with redundancy. I know so again, I'm doing government work at the time. Any government agency requires, if you're a contractor for them, you're required to have UL 2050. And so we had offsite monitoring by UL 2050, but all they did was route directly to, at the time, to PD. So at my headquarters, we did our own video verification, and then when I found out we were getting fined like 3 times a month by this municipality out in California outside of LA, because we weren't, and we had motion sensors that outside of the closed area would just pick up on people walking by, and so because they had the wrong type of motion sensors, and so they would pick up the people outside, the alarm would go off, we had no local enunciation, so it would route to the offsite would call 911, police would show up, and people would be like, what are you doing here? Everything's fine, right? So they're like, your fine is in the mail. And it was like $250 a pop or something like that. And then it escalated based on the number that you had, and so I had to go fix that. So this has been a problem in the places, like you said, like Baer, in the 90s, it was at that. And I doubt those levels have gone down, because if you think about like, where is this kind of monitoring used most small, like SMB, small businesses, strip malls, mom and pop shops, like other places that have that don't have security professionals there, that just have, they're just using alarm.com, right? They're paying their, $20 a month, and it just routes right to 911. Well, now there's this whole cottage industry that is emerging for man-in-the-middle video verification alarm monitoring. Some people perform it in-house. Verkada has it as an embedded service. So to your point, Baer, I see this as being a great opportunity for access control companies to really just scrape the landscape of intrusion detection and embed it as part of their offering. Some have done it already. Like Motorola, within their Alta suite, has built out an intrusion detection module that connects right into OpenPath and the old Ava, now Alta system. So all cloud-based. It can do video verification through the video. You can pull it up on your phone, see it, say verified, something like that, right? So you can do that whole process. Verkada has it as well. More and more kind of, we'll call them full stack. I think that's the power of some of these big conglomerates, maybe, Honeywell eventually as well. These big companies who have all the technologies, they can just push it all into one thing. I always felt that if it wasn't mandated by contract, I just used my access control system as my intrusion detection. It was all there. Throw some motions up, do some video, line crossing through video analytics. That stuff has been around for decades. It's very easily done. You plug it in. Worst case scenario, you're putting it into as like a dry input to an I/O into your board, and it's just hitting you with a signal, and then you're pulling up the camera, whatever it is, right? It's very doable to not have this separate Bosch panel that has to, or this separate DMP panel that has to have this hardware integration to come into your access control and your video and make it overly complicated. It can be right there inside of your system. So
I think that honestly, I really hope that they take it back too, because I feel like it's a little bit held hostage from that residential retail space of like ADTs and the orange one. You know what I'm saying? That I can't remember. Vivio or Vivint or something. Vivint. There it is. Yeah, sorry, you're just orange. That's your marketing for you. No, but like I feel like they've held it hostage a little, and the problem there is that they, from an integrator standpoint in the industry, I don't feel, and I haven't seen, and I've seen shared opinions that are the same, that they haven't stuck very well on training, and so you get a lot of cowboys in an ADI van, or an ADT van. That then kind of keep that industry, because the end user, especially in residential, is like, oh, I need alarm, I guess I'll call ADT, or I guess I'll call whoever this is. And then you still have integrators that are alarm first or alarm only integrators. And so pulling them into access control or video surveillance, I think would be beneficial, because some of those guys, the older they get, are just geniuses when it comes to relay logic, when it comes to their understanding of how systems should work. If they could just be pulled back into, I think it would be really beneficial, a good robust
and intrusion
building
is
of
such
our
a
industry.
nuance, like for true intrusion, like we talked about, right? Like for, again, when I think about the enterprise world that I've operated in for majority of my career versus and we talked about this is the same thing with the mobile versus, right? Mobile credentials and standard intrusion are very great for like high majority of the physical locations in the world where right, because that, the number of strip malls and small business locations that need 5 cameras, 3 doors, and just standard intrusion detection because they're only open Monday through Friday 9 to 4. Like those are way more than these intricate, massive tech company campuses where that won't fly. And so having that, but I think there's a unification opportunity where it's like, take these folks who have depth of knowledge around like what makes intrusion work really, really well, and how do we get that into the new age access control and video products where we have this, again, kind of full stack of and that's what I like about, that's what, one of the things that I like about what Verkada does is that they give you this like full stack. And that's why SMB is where they crush, because the folks who just want to pay it like a Netflix subscription every month and get all their stuff in and not really worry about it anymore, that's really enticing for these smaller companies. Like I was just at, Planet Fitness, where like places like that, that's exactly what they want. Right? There's like, they just need they need someone to come in and help them and tell them what to do. And I don't know that a lot of us in kind of the more access control video world are equipped to have the intrusion detection conversations. But to your point, I mean, the question was posed is that, like, what's the future of burglar alarms based on the advent of camera sensors and machine learning and all that? I mean, there's a world where your camera and the logic on it can do that. Right now, no one's trusting it fully yet. There's still that man-in-the-middle human verification. But, like, I know based on the product development I did for the last 4 years that the tech is there to say, yep, that's a human in a place they shouldn't be, call 911, right? And so, like, will the police department trust that? I mean, I can also write... I can put a bot that can have a conversation with the PD if they want to be called, right? There's enough like technology there where you could theoretically have your AI bot have a human conversation with the police and say, "Hi, this is John from ABC Corporation. I've verified that we have an intruder on location. Please send PD." And they'd be like, "Okay." Like, I'm gonna be like, am I talking to a robot? Like, they're not. I mean, maybe eventually, but so I mean, we're not like really far away from that whole solution being able to put together with those are all software enhancements. Like those are all analytic enhancements. Those aren't hardware enhancements. So you take what's already there and you layer a software, technology analytic component onto it, and then you get that output.
Yeah, Benji, what's your take on it coming from like the manufacturer side? Is that even a conversation on the table at an access control company? I'm curious.
I mean,
I said that more aggressive than I meant it. Like, are you even talking about it, Benji?
Talking about this, Benji? What the hell?
I mean, we're definitely talking about that, and currently, like we from our perspective, we integrate with a lot of different burglar alarm systems, and there can be some pros and cons to that because a lot of the time you want your alarm system separate from your access, because if someone gets access to your building, then they have the ability to turn off your alarm system as well. But I would say like. I mean, you guys already touched on it. You both brought up different companies that are stepping into that space and already kind of overstepping the need for it. And so I definitely I don't know where the industry is going to take it, because there's still some big alarm companies out there that do a lot of business. And Baer, to piggyback off of those companies that do burglar alarm first, like that do alarm first. They were doing RMR before it was cool in access control. Like these guys have some of the most profitable businesses out there because they have, every goodwill in Oregon on their account. And, they're getting monthly reoccurring revenue off of these, and they pick your poison. Which integrator wants to buy us up? Like, you're going to pay premium price for it if you want our business, right? And so I honestly don't know. I just think with the improvement of technology and all the sensors out there, and especially from the access control side, is there really a need for it? Because the technology's there, like you said, John. But how do we implement it? How do we make it verifiable for PD, right?
Yeah, I think it's hard. You both brought this up. Like, if I am using, name your local alarm company, I've been using them forever, and I'm used to them. Like, who's going to introduce me to this new technology, right? So there's a barrier that's created. There's a moat that exists to, again, a large size of this of the marketplace. Who's like, nope, I've worked with Jimmy, has done my alarm and my access control, and it works, and I'm and that's fine, right? So I think the thing that could move this, and you brought it up, is the requirement of the verification. Because if I have to call up Jimmy and say, hey, I've just got notified by my local municipality that they will not send police to my site unless it's verified, what does that mean, and how are you going to help me? And if they can't answer the question, well, now it's like, well, Jimmy can't help me. I'm Googling, and guess who's got the strongest SEO? Right, like we know who's going to be popping up in that in your feed once you Google video verification of alarms. Right, there's 2 or 3 companies that are going to come up in there. I feel like I should do that right now and just verify. But that's what's going to happen. So it's interesting because the unintended consequence of requiring this verification is the mandate for a technology evolution, which could the unintended consequence is sideswipe this legacy intrusion detection industry who's not prepared to be having this conversation because they don't want to go learn a new technology. Maybe I'm oversimplifying and overgeneralizing, but if there's you said it, like, these are some pretty sweetheart, RMR before RMR was cool, man, right? If you can go sign up, that's why some of these, you look every week, I feel like, in like Security News Now or one of the other, like Pi Barker is buying up another alarm company, like every week. They exist in multiples, and you're buying the contracts because they're valuable, and once you're in there, and there's a high barrier to take you out unless this barrier is what we've just talked about. So it's very interesting, and I think that's a wedge that's available for folks who want to come in and offer something new, or even go start identifying these alarm companies, these service providers, the smaller regional integrators who focus on alarm or have it in their portfolio, to say, this is coming and I can help you with it. I can offer you a solution that now you can go upsell every single person in your portfolio $10 a month, and now we have this video verification feature. And again, some of it's like these like Actuate, Sunny over at Actuate, and that group, they have they do like gun detection and other things like that, but at the end of the day, they have video analytic with a man-in-the-middle verification. Verkada has it too. There's other companies that, I think Zero Eyes does. So there's companies out there where like that's what they do. And so, this is a great opportunity for them to come in and really differentiate themselves in that spot.
And I can speak from experience that the barrier to get into access from alarm is smoother than to get from access into alarm. Because alarm has a lot of different, like you said, nuances. There's a lot of moving parts that you're having to meet code, and if you mess up, the cops, well, they're not coming, but
not anymore.
not anymore. But let's move on to our last question. So my question actually comes from a commenter in a couple of our posts. So we post this stuff, we chop it up, we put it on LinkedIn, and we want to really encourage that people ask us questions that they want to hear Talkin Shop about, and maybe they have opinions, and then we'll chop it up, and you can drop your opinions and comments on it. It's really about pushing it past this podcast so that the whole industry is talking shop, because if we can, that makes us all better in the end. So this comes from my OG homie, Chris Wilson. He's like, my number one go-to. And he asked on one of our things, he asked the comment, how do you approach changing, updating, improving your skill set for the next role that you want? Does this impact how you approach the current role that you're in? So we'll start with Benji, and then let's hear what you think about Chris Wilson's question.
Yeah. So you guys know the old saying, don't dress for the job that you have, you dress for the job that you want to have. I think the same thing can be applied to, your mindset, your skill set. So whatever role that you want, that you see yourself in, I mean, first of all, you have to have a dream. You have to have a goal that you want to achieve. You want to, I'm a firm believer of going big, shoot for the stars, right? Or shoot for the moon, right? If you miss, you still end up in the stars. But I would say the same thing happens if even if it's a more technical role or something like that, is you gotta start working on it now. Even if you're not in that role yet, start working on where you want to be, and eventually you'll get there. Actually, one of my favorite quotes from the legendary speaker Zig Ziglar is, oh, I'm going to mess this up. Oh, I'm going to feel really bad about this because he's my go-to. Do more things that you're, oh man, I'm so sorry, guys.
You're forgiven.
So the more you do that you're not paid to do, eventually you'll get paid to do it, if that makes sense. So do the things that you're go above and beyond in your current role. So go above and beyond, do things outside of your scope, especially if it's something that you're interested in and it's heading you towards one of your goals or something that you want to accomplish. Do the things that are outside of your scope, and slowly, eventually, you're going to get paid to do that. Someone's going to see that you're going above and beyond, and you're going to get that title. You're going to get that role. Wow, I'm punching the can right here.
Real fired up.
So that's in a nutshell what I think is, don't dress for the job that you're currently in, dress for the job that you want, but in your mindset.
And so does that mindset impact your current role? Do you have like your head on a swivel, or are you like looking for the more things you want out of your role? Are you pushing or like subliminally hinting your boss, like, giving them Valentine's Day flowers?
I still think you gotta do your job, right? You still gotta do your base expectation, right? It's then when you start going above and beyond, or when you start asking your boss for extra projects, or when you take the initiative on something, that's when your boss says like, oh, he's already doing the base level, but he wants to go above and beyond. I'm going to hire that person to do this when the opportunity presents itself.
Mm-hmm. What about you, John?
Yeah, I mean, this is right in my wheelhouse. I'm gonna jam on this one for a second. So you guys know I coach young athletes, and I work with athletes as well as with do leadership and performance development for security professionals and executives. What I tell my athletes is that you're not going to get better in practice. You're going to get better outside of practice. Practice is to learn how to do the job, and outside of practice is when you're going to learn how to get better. So I refer to it as the unrequired. Right? The unrequired is all the work that you do above and beyond the required. So in this context, like Benji said, it's not saying like, hey, I want to do this cool stuff and not this stuff, right? You got to show up and do all the stuff that you're required to do. And then you go and you find out what the little bit more is. And now if that's at your job, then you do it there. But it's like, take that extra project. I've said this before, say yes to everything till you can say no to anything. And so when I was a young professional, man, I was working 60, 70-hour weeks. I was taking on every project I could. I was in a season of my life that was very open to growth, where I could grind like that. And I still feel passionately there's no better shortcut to success than hard work. And so you want to go further, faster, work as hard as you can. And then eventually you'll be able to say, slow down, do, kind of be picky, be choosy, do just the things you want to do. But that's earned. That's earned over a long period of time of relentless, intentional focus and an unbelievable patience. Things always take longer than you think they're going to take, and that's okay. And so we can't say like, I want to be a director, and I want it tomorrow. I want to do all these things that I'm not willing to put the work in. And so I think that to answer Chris's question more specifically, I believe in like Benji said, big goals. Like I wrote down the goals that I've kind of materialized. I have on a piece of paper that I wrote down in 2017. And so only like something like 20% of professionals actually have goals. Single digits write them down. So if you say, I want to be whatever you want to be when you grow up, you want to be this, and I use that tongue in cheek. You're anybody listening to this and you're not exactly where you want to be, then write down where you want to be and how long you think it'll take you to get there. And then write down what things you'd have to do and who you'd have to become in order to get there. Find the people who are already there and then get to know them. And then act like that, dress like that. So when I used to wear a suit coat to work every single day. Not because we had to, but because I was like, this is what executives do. And so my peers are wearing polo shirts and jeans, stuff like that. And I was like, I want to look like I belong in that room. So as soon as I became an executive and I was on the executive team and I was in that room, probably 15 years younger than everybody else, I didn't feel as weird because I had already envisioned myself and already acted like I belonged there. And so like some of this stuff sounds woo-woo, kind of like guru, but go listen to Zig Ziglar. This shit's right from, like, I'm not making this stuff up. This is, we joked before we pressed record about all the books and shit that we have and what we read. But I was just listening to John Maxwell on my run this morning. Like these leadership experts, John Maxwell, Zig Ziglar, they talk a lot about sales and things like that, but their methods to success are timeless. And that's what this is all about. And so have a plan, write it down, and start the journey to becoming the person that is in that role now, because you're not just going to show up on third base and be like, ooh, I made it. Like you got to run the bases. You got to do the work. But you don't know where you're going unless you have a plan. And I actually serendipitously, the morning we're recording this is on a Friday. I posted my LinkedIn post this morning. I literally talked about this topic. Said, do you have goals? Have you written them down today? If you don't have a path, you don't know where you're going, you're never going to show up. So start with the end in mind, reverse engineer what success looks like. And yes, it affects how you show up in your role today, because you have two choices. You show up in your role today pissed off that you're still in it and you're not where you want to be, or you do the best fucking job you can possibly do in the role you have today while still having an eye towards what you want to do in the future. And it may not be where you are right now. That's fine. So you may have to make that tough choice that you can't become who you want to be in the place you currently are. I've had to make that decision multiple times. And so when that happens, then you got to make the tough choice on then have a bet on me and change. And actually all of us or all three of us have had that call made and had that decision, in the last 5 years, probably more than once. And so we speak from a place of I think both compassion, empathy, and experience when it comes to this topic. And great topic from Chris, because Chris is also one of my favorite people in the industry. I just talked to him a couple of weeks ago. Very, very thoughtful question to throw out there, which I think will be beneficial for a lot of folks who are listening. Bear, what about you? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, both those things that you said, Benji and John, like that's the mentality you have to have. I don't think that a lot of people are told that. And so they from their perspective, because they don't understand what Benji or John, what you were saying, they look at it as like, why, like they kind of play victim. Like, why do they always get to go do that? Or like, why doesn't anybody look over me? And I think if you can shift your mentality to the things that you two were talking about, and then I've noticed that in my own experience coming from, I was like just a young gun locksmith at like, I think like $12, $13 an hour, to sitting in like security engineering for, a state, a federal, institution. It's a journey that I didn't get there without being okay of asking a dumb question. And I asked questions that I had bosses or I had guys who were teaching me in the field or whoever look at me and be like, what, like, it's this, they say it like that because they're hurt, right? They're not making it or in that mentality that you were talking about. But you're like, okay, well, it doesn't matter how I get the information. I've got it now. And so I start storing that. And I'm okay sitting I remember when I moved from locksmithing to like electronic security, it came with the jump of just getting in my own van and doing my own thing. And so I would go up to ADI on like a Thursday morning and they'd be serving like donuts and Diet Coke. And it would be some vendor standing there, talking about his product. And I got the most information because there would also be, guys who just wanted free donuts and Diet Coke there, but they've been in the industry forever. So I would ask a question like, well, what's the difference between normally open and normally closed? And the vendor, he's 21. He's like in a tucked in shirt and a polo, like, But the big guy who's sitting there in the trucker hat goes, well, what he means by that is this and that and the other. And then you gain the information, So it's like, it's okay to ask the question that you're like, man, they're going to look at me like I'm stupid for asking this. But once you get the information, you've got it. And now, to be totally honest, I didn't have ChatGPT. So, like, you could just sit down and get that answer without having to sit in a room and look dumb. But, yeah, I think that it's just being, the approach. I like that. I think, Chris, he thinks about everything he says. And so I really like the word that he used, like, what's your approach to it? And I think it is that being humble and being just okay with not being the smartest guy in the room. In fact, it's an advantage. And that's why that's why I involve myself in like the access control executive brief. There's guys in there that are way above my pay grade, But if I'm sitting there gleaning from conversations that they're having with each other, I'm taking away from that and applying it to my own story because I'm not necessarily trying to be them or be their story. I want my own story, but to be around that I think is really crucial, especially when you're trying to switch roles or you're trying to like gain a new understanding of something. So that's kind of how I would come at it.
Benji, you said something that maybe might be the most important thing to highlight is never be the smartest person in the room. As soon as you're the smartest person in the room, you got to find a different room. And you're right, like that's one of the reasons why the access control executive brief community is so powerful is that I'll never be the smartest person in that room, right? Like there's some things that I know, but there's people like John, Polly, Sal, like these guys, dude, these guys know so much about so much. And, Brian, Parrot, like these guys, they're like, I just like to be around them because if I can just get a nugget of information from what they have and you just learn through dialogue, and you guys too, right? I mean, like we learn that, like, why do we like having these conversations with each other? Because we learn so much from each other and we push each other outside of our comfort zone so that we have to listen to something that may be contrary to our own beliefs because it's like, well, I didn't think about that. And if you're open to learning, right? So these two things. One, never be the smartest person in the room. If you are, find a new room. Two, be open to learning and have a never finish mentality. There's a reason why I decided to go back and get my MBA like 10 years after I graduated my undergrad. It was like, because I wasn't done yet and I'll never be done. And whether it's, learning from each other, learning from books, learning from audiobooks, which apparently don't count as books. Benji and I have been told, different podcast topic.
I didn't tell them, by the way. You made that sound like Benji and I.
No, it wasn't
Bear was telling us.
We came to our own conclusion that book, physical book evangelists don't believe that audiobooks count, and therefore that's what we've been told. So anyway, just like you never stop learning, man, and that's where I feel maybe foreshadowing a different topic for us to talk about. I think that's where the industry has a lot of opportunity to develop, is more opportunities for learning, for actual learning, not some credential that you get once and then as long as you show up to an event you get education credits for it and that's how you like revalidate it every year. Like real learning, real development, like how many people are spending time now focused on what AI and machine learning are actually going to do to our industry? I mean, I really know like 2 people, maybe 3, Don Marone and the Groom brothers are the three guys that I know who like have spent an unbelievable, and maybe Jordan Hill at Hivewatch. Like, it's a small community of guys who like spend all their time focused on understanding what's the capability for machine learning and AI as it pertains to our industry. And you gotta love like folks who are who are doing like a full-time job and saying, I want to learn how to do this other stuff, right? That's what I think that's what we're talking about, is like you got to be willing to do the job you're not getting paid for until you're going to get paid for it.
Yeah.
I think there was a theme throughout each one of our last segment there, and it was basically, you know, find people that you can talk shop with. Right, like that was essentially right. Like, find your crew, find your community that you can talk shop with, whether it's the trucker guy or the guy that knows too much about AI. Like, find your shop.
There it is.
Yeah, for sure. Well, awesome, guys. I guess because my question was last, I'll close us out. This is Talkin Shop with Benji and Jon and Baer, and we will see you guys next time on Talkin Shop with 3 more questions. Send your questions in, comment on our stuff. We love to talk, even outside of this podcast. I know we all 3 are involved very socially within the industry, so hit us up, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thanks, everyone.